Yes, sir.
Mm.
I have collected some of the PD questions, and yeah, I think
Okay.
hopefully this could be very helpful for the audience as well. You might have seen the technology changing from 180 micrometer node to 5 nanometer node in the recent
Mm.
times which we are using. So,
Yeah.
what are the challenges that kept increasing with decrease in the transistor size?
The first thing that goes when is that you probably use the standard cells, and that standard cells has already been designed by somebody else. So the timing wise, you will have different type of tools that come into the picture. So when you have a technology shrink, the time it takes to run, say, placement tools is much longer, right? It takes like say five days to run, say, placement, just a placement block, just
Yes,
five
sir.
days, you know. So it's like 2 million gates. So in order to run that, you have to run the timing. So you have to, do the floor planning of the. So the thing is, you have to look at various timing issues in synthesis. And in synthesis, you have to look at, registers, whether all the registers have all the outputs. If you have async separated from sync, you have low fan in and fan out. Then you have flatten the speed and the structures for area versus, you know, area versus timing, speed, right?
Yeah, yes,
And non-critical paths inside synthesis, right? Because now you're
yes,
doing synthesis work, and the synthesis work you have to, for larger designs, you have to do all this grouping and try to meet timing in synthesis, right?
yeah,
And unless you meet that timing synthesis, you cannot move forward, right?
yes, sir.
And so then you have to look at scan insertion inside synthesis. And when you have the more challenging things is, you would have in 180 nanometer, you probably didn't have other things like dynamic, safe based dynamic simulation and dynamic floor planning and dynamic timing, right? Switching activities, noise, and IR drop issues. But IR drop will come later, but dynamic switching inside synthesis might be another issue with, say, 10 nanometer design compared to 180 nanometer. So you have to have other tools you need to do that. So you will have more tools and more challenges, for timing. And you will run after that, you will start doing floor planning. In floor planning, there is much more challenging floor plan that you have to do. So you have to do manual work, in floor planning. Try to meet timing. And that's where more challenge is to how to place the RAMs and the macros, right? When you connect that to the pins, IO pins, and you connect that to the standard cells, you have to have more work doing manual work in optimizing that manually, right? And you would have to do region-based placement because you'd have to meet timing. Timing is more difficult, right? It gets more and more difficult to meet timing. And area also, it becomes an issue for some cases. So you have to manipulate between and talk to the front-end design engineer as to how the area and timing is more important for this particular block. Some blocks have timing more important. Some blocks have area, right? So you have to do that in synthesis. So you have to start doing physical design and run the placement. But you don't have to go further. You have to pass the information from placement into the front end synthesis and do some iterations there. to find out all the problems in physical placement of the standard cells, and your placement is good or not. And then you move forward and do global routing. Again, you look at all the global routing parameters, right? And see all the values there. And then move on to final routing. So in final routing, you will look at more of the issues with, IR drop and final routing. Then in these days, with lower, lower 5 nanometer and 10 nanometer, you have to look at power as an issue. And you have UPF-based logic synthesis. So you have to specify UPF parameters and do UPF work inside synthesis in bigger designs and smaller designs. And look into, crosstalk, after global routing. But before global routing, you have to also look at CTS, clock tree synthesis, right? And you had asked a question about in clock tree synthesis, you have to use the drop-off points and the mesh, and you have to create a mesh, and the drop-off points is going to determine the skew, right? You have to determine the skew of the clock tree synthesis. And most of the skews are done automatically, but if you have multiple clock domains, right? It's more challenging in multiple clock domains to challenge skew. And in addition to skew, there will be distance from the PLL to the DQ flip-flop for delays, right? There's going to be a delay from that, which is different from the skew. Insertion delay, we call it, right? So insertion delay will be also an issue.
Yes.
In CTS. So if you don't fix that, you cannot move forward.
Yeah, I mean, that is also one of my questions. So we have considering the skew, right? So
Yeah.
Why we should be considering the insertion delay?
Yeah, insertion delay is important because the delay is going to cause a delay in all the other blocks, interconnection of all the blocks and the clocks. And so timing will be affected. Insertion delay will. So you cannot have large insertion.
Okay. Yeah. We are actually checking the timing between the top level blocks, right? So that could be it.
Yeah.
Okay, sir.
So you have to check for the drop-off points. There's going to be a drop-off inside the mesh, right? So you will be dropping off clock tree blocks, tree for bigger designs. There will be a riblets. Have you heard about riblets? No? It's a mesh. It's a mesh, right? And inside the mesh, you will be dropping off some clock tree work, some clock tree synthesis work, and to improve the clock tree, right? For skew. For skew. So you have to.
I mean, we generally used to lay a mesh for the clock buffers separately. So because they were getting a higher airdrop.
So you have to look into that, and there's become more and more challenging. So in order to move forward, you have to spend a lot more time, obviously. But in addition to that, there are different tools you have to get used to and trying out different tools for UPF, for sleep transistors, for retention, for isolation, for other things in UPF, then power considerations and dynamic power and static power, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
And all that you have to do it in synthesis instead of doing that in place and route. If somebody else is doing synthesis, then you have to work with them. And you have to provide the information from placement, right, to the synthesis tool. So is synthesis, you doing it yourself or you doing it somebody else doing?
Synthesis, there is a separate team.
Separate team, yeah. So you have to work with synthesis and you provide them with the placement information. and various information you have after you hand placed all your RAMs, right?
Macros. Yeah,
macros and RAMs. You hand place that and you see and the timing, and you give that back, and they will probably run it again, right? And resynthesize it again. So you already know this at 180 nanometers, but there will be more and more tools and more challenges in learning those tools. So UPF tools, placement, hand placement. So after that is done, you most likely have to do multi-corner timing. That's more of a challenge.
Yeah, that comes to my next question, sir. I mean, it's something like, why can't we just do it in the just of a two corners? I mean, two worst corners. Why we have to?
Because in 5 nanometer and 10 nanometer, there are about 10 different corners.
Yeah.
I know, and each corner has a separate timing model that you have to consider. And you have to do, for 180 nanometer, it's pretty easy. 20 nanometer is what you would probably be doing, or 45 nanometer. You have to look at flight lines, floor planning in more details, obviously, because it's going to be much more challenging. And what happens is you will have the cap table and floor planning. You'd like to look at the long nets and the short nets, which is 80% of that, providing to the synthesis tool. And there is a timing model that has cap tables and left libraries fed back, and you'd have to do that more. Feedback.
Yes, yeah. With respect to Moore's law, I want to ask one question. So we have came from 180 nanometer to 5 nanometer now. So how far we will go with respect to reduction in transistor size? And will there be any saturation point for the transistor size?
Right now, the Intel is 5, and there is what other company? Samsung is doing 3 nanometer. They're using FinFETs is already done with Samsung. They're
ribbon FET,
ribbon FET. Yeah, they're not doing FinFETs anymore.
Yes.
Gate around, gate around technology ahead of the FinFET, which is 1 nanometer, and that will last for another 10 more years. Gate around, say for 1 nanometer and below, with Samsung. Intel is behind on 5 nanometer. So
yes, sir. Question is like a power spec. So power spec is one of the important aspect of the design in the physical design, which we also do the same thing manually. So this is very important, right? So in order to provide the power to each and every in the design. So how we should design that? What are the different things we should take into consideration so that we can actually clean the power spec very, very fast?
Yeah, you see the IR drop from the Red Hawk, right?
Yes.
Red Hawk will tell you the red spots, the hot spots.
Yeah.
So you can place the vias and the power mesh around that particular hotspot, right? And you look at the hotspots and you can provide the IR drop, and then provide the vias and the fixes required in that area, right? You can see if the placement is very thick, and it uses a lot of standard cells for that area. You can change the layers. So you can change the layers and spread it out a little bit in that region to fix the hotspot.
Yeah.
So there are techniques in Red Hawk that will show you where the hotspots are. And they will tell you the techniques of doing that, and you can improve the placement in that area. Right? Or you can use the layers, because higher layers are better for IR drop.
Yes, sir.
Then,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So you can use lower layers for timing, but for IR drop, it would be better to use a higher level layer.
Yeah, yeah. So regarding the IR drop only, I have one more question, sir. So how the people should choose the static and dynamic IR thresholds?
The dynamic, you can take SAIF values, right? You heard about SAIF, SAIF?
Yes, sir. Switching activity information file.
Yeah, yeah. I think you can do that in synthesis.
Yeah.
Yeah. And do use that more before you even start placement and talk to the team for improving dynamic simulation.
Okay. Okay, sir. So it's like the timing aspect in the lower technology nodes, the timing aspect is also very important for us. So it's very difficult it's a challenging task to meet the timing nowadays. So what are the different things we need to consider in order to meet the timing very quickly?
The key is basically for physical design is floor planning and making sure that you've placed your macros properly.
Yes, sir.
To meet timing and provide that information in placement. If your timing doesn't meet on placement, if you have extremely long delays, then you have to look at some other issues with timing in placement of the macros going around, a particular wire going around the macro, something like that. You have to look at that for extremely large values, But 80% of them are small values. So if you see a large value, you have to look at scan related values. Some values are extremely large that are not related to timing for standard cell placement, but it's more related to scan or delays that are caused by, scan is one. And so it may be something that you have to manually look at for large values. But for small values, you can use SVT and other technologies. You can use LVTs for improving timing for small value. Yeah. But for large values, you don't have to try to do placement, but look at some scan or other things that might cause this unusual routing problem or placement problem, which is kind of very different and very special.
So should we provide the feedback, sir, after the placement? Should we provide any feedback to the synthesis team stating we can go with different types of cells? Or
yeah, that is for smaller delays.
Okay.
Yeah, for small delays, and they can look into the RTL itself. But for unusually large delays, which is 10% of your timing, 90% of your timing will come with short design, short delays. But yeah, and mostly you can take all that information and feed it back for the delays, but you have to manually look at something that is causing the large delays, and you have different corners, right?
Yes.
And so the large delays will be because some different corners have been running, and that can cause delays inside synthesis itself. Right? Yeah, Perl, writing scripts in Perl, or also being able to do Unix, Linux, some of the features there, along with Perl, to do some side work, as one thing. Second thing is the new tools that you will be giving, probably UPF, all the things that are required to do retention, sleep transistor, isolation, some of the techniques that some of the jobs might require UPF work. There will be other teams that are doing that right now for you.
Yeah.
But sometimes there will be another company that will ask you to do UPF.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, or they may ask you to do synthesis, run synthesis. So in that case, you have to learn the synthesis process and all the things that you need in synthesis for register output, input, and flattening and structuring issues in synthesis. So you have to keep more knowledge available for fixing timing in the front end as well, and learn that. Because you may be asked to do that as compared to what you're doing right now from say netlist to synthesis. I'm sorry, from netlist to GDS. You could be doing from RTL to GDS, So you have to keep up with that. In terms of IR drop, you need to look at large skews and know how to spread the standard cells and add straps and improve the IR drop issues as one. Then, and crosstalk will be a more issue on how to fix crosstalk. So there is a way to fix crosstalk where you use standard cells, or you have to spread the wiring and so forth in crosstalk. And along with timing, you also, if you spread the standard cells or spread the wiring, on how to do that, after you do final routing.
Yes.
That's one of the things you can improve things on, learning more about all that. For the long delays you find is, have you heard about SMPs? They are like
SMPs.
Yes, SMPs.
No, sir.
SMPs are they are basically long delays, that are causing timing issues. And so you should learn how to fix the SDC file. Have you heard about SDC file?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So inside the SDC file, all the specifications are there, right? For input delays, output delays, various things. So you may have a long delay caused by, say, false paths. And these false paths may cause a lot of long delays that you have to fix. Like crosstalk.
Yeah.
So you will be told to fix that inside the SDC file, where you have to specify the SDC, the cells where you may have to pick a particular net that's causing that delay.
Yeah, yes.
So things like that for non-critical paths. SDC file.
Yeah. So one more question, sir. One last question. So it's something like in which countries we have more opportunities for a PD engineer?
PD engineer, yeah, you can have PD engineers in the US as well. There's a lot of requirements for that. What they do is they try to place as many people overseas from India.
Okay.
And they're probably paying you, I don't know what the rates are, but the rates are lower in India.
Yes, sir.
So you will get higher rates here in the US, if you do PD work.
Yeah.
And if you can apply, if you have a master's, then you can apply for PD here in the US. You can get opportunities. There are other places outside of the US, like Europe and Singapore. Singapore has some PD positions.
Yeah.
That have good rates.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. So any final words for our audience, sir, regarding the PD? Yeah.
Yeah, the PD situation is that the US hires people through HCL. Have you heard of HCL?
Yeah.
HCL, Infosys.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, these companies, you can apply there for opportunities in PD. And for designs that are, from 5 nanometer and below, you will have to learn different tools.
Yes,
and
sir.
so they're having different challenges.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So UPF, synthesis, timing in synthesis, and doing like noise and or glitch inside crosstalk in the physical side in the back end. After final route will be more defined. So
Yes,
you
sir.
have to run prime time, learn how to run prime time. And then switching activities inside synthesis, for dynamic and, static power.
Yes, sir. Yes.
So all these areas will be more challenging. And you have to keep in touch with learning this all the time. Nuclear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Have a great day. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Happy weekend.
For more such videos, please hit that like button. And thanks for watching. Be brave. Jai Hind.